Okay, let me throw this out since we're going to attempt more nuance. People have a difficult time with this, but the perpetrators of bad ideas can at the same time in the same space be victims of bad ideas. And I am amazed at the resistance I get to that. When someone goes out and they're a Christian nationalist and they are, I don't know, they're doing and saying really pretty bad things. Many aren't aware of the environment they came out of, the conditioning, the indoctrination, the cocoon, the shell, the conspiracy stuff that is their normal. When did we lose the ability to say, yeah, they're doing great harm, but we also need to understand the antecedents, right? The things that came before that produced the agent of harm, and then see them also as victim. All right, Shannon, throw some psychology at me on this one.
I think it's just a matter of we want to be able to point to the harmful person, chide and condemn them, identify them as harmful, and then distance ourselves from them. Like we don't want to be able to find a villain. And in the age that we live in now, like in the information age, it's very easy to find a villain. Like instead of people just being, someone off in the distance who might have an idea about someone like you can be faced with them consistently, so you feel that harm more directly on a broader scale. So you want to just get away from that person because you see them as doing harm. You don't really see them as, just a human who's multifaceted. You see them specifically as someone who's causing harm. And I think that's kind of a valid position to have, because you shouldn't have to put yourself in harm's way. But I do think that it does go to the nth degree, because I think that we kind of break off into factions. And because we've broken off into factions, we've become increasingly polarized. And that increasing polarization causes insulation in the groups on both sides. And that's what I think is dangerous. And that's where I think that the dehumanization comes from, because dehumanization happens when we see people as a member of an outgroup. And now we're very much forming different factions that we can clearly identify as outgroups, giving them labels, and then seeing everybody within that outgroup as somebody who is bad just definitionally because they belong to that group.
Now imagine if someone had stumbled across me when I was a Rush Limbaugh listener, right? When I read Ann Coulter and watched Fox News and went to and did think we were one nation under God, and I always think, I wonder how I would have been treated if Twitter would have been around then. Would someone have lobbed the grenade over the wall at me and written me off and said I had to be crushed, I'm a lost cause, I'm an idiot? Or would they have made an attempt to try to engage the flesh and blood, three-dimensional human being? And I've been guilty. Now, I don't give quarter to the sociopath. I'm Ted Cruz, Marjorie Taylor. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the everydays. Paul, you want to weigh in on this one before I move on?
Sure. Well, one of the things that frustrates me greatly is when when people on my side of the fence, non-believers, want to say, those people can't be reasoned with, or they can't change their mind. And I stare blankly at them like, I am single digits of years out of this. And of course, I changed my mind. So I was as hardcore to it as anyone. Seth, I think you feel probably the same way. And that, we were able to come out of this. So
now I have to jump in real quick, Paul. Hang on. So if I come to you and I show you the meme that says you cannot reason people out of a belief they weren't reasoned into to begin with, you see that and the vein on your forehead pops out.
Absolutely.
And I have that reaction too.
Right? Yeah, no, I think that is absolutely ridiculous, because you think of any position you just hold without scrutiny. Of course, evidence should be able to, there's some level of evidence that can bring you out of anything you hold, whether you hold to it rationally or not. So yeah, I don't like that at all. And I think one of the things that I try and do, and one of the things I love about you, Seth, is that for me, it's still so fresh that I can't help but have empathy. And I do think that in some ways, I was a victim, both a victim of my community and things, but I got to confess, I was a self-victim. I kind of bought into the black and white thinking and built my own cage around me. I ended up becoming more fundamentalist, I think, than the people around me due to my own misplaced ideas. So that empathy, man, I just I want people to feel comfortable talking to me, and for me to never lose that notion that we are all just a product of the information that we're given and the environment that we have. I mean, obviously there's genetic components, but um, that that someone is hopelessly lost on either side of the fence is that's not true. We need to empathize, and we need, so victim is the wrong word, but I do empathize with someone who can hold these ideas, and I hope I never lose that.
Can I
So,
interject?
go ahead,
I'm
Shannon. Go ahead.
so sorry. I just want to say something because I think when we have this conversation, we tend to focus on the polarization, and that is important to like focus on and analyze. There's nuance for sure, but also I think that what people are getting at when they have this discussion is, you know, people are being unreasonable and they're saying people are bad on the internet or in person, and they should be doing something different. But it's also worth pointing out that a lot of these people are actively causing harm, and it's not up to the people that they're harming to talk them out of that. I mean, it's okay if someone's hitting you with a bat to say that guy's hitting me with a bat, somebody should stop him, right? Like that the harm, or I need to get away from him and nobody else should go around him. He's hitting people with bats, right? Like you wouldn't chastise somebody or admonish them.
At that moment that he was wailing on you with the bat would not be the moment that a victim would say, "Tell me about your childhood. Can you
Right.
speak to me about the cultural influences that brought you to this moment of violence?" You know, your
Right.
reaction must be different, right?
Yeah, I don't think that it's as black and white as like even we initially were talking about, because like what I said is true. There's nuance, and that we are becoming more polarized and we are outgrouping in like at a rapid breakneck speed, and then that does make it easier for us to just other people entirely and kind of strip them of their humanity, and that's a bad thing. But also, if people are doing bad things, the people who they are doing those bad things to or encouraging society to, you know, push down, it shouldn't be up to them to, you know, have respectability discourse with them, to be like, okay, well, I guess the onus is on me to see your humanity even though you're not seeing mine, and have a rational discussion with you. Great for the people who are who are capable of doing that, who want to do that. I think that there's great benefit in that, but that is not a reasonable expectation to have of everybody in that circumstance. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
that makes
Because I
sense.
think there's nuance that needs to be explored if you want to actually get to the root of the issue, and that's an important component to the conversation about it.
Shannon, you were never religious. Do I remember that right?
No, I was an Anglican. I was competitively religious. I was the first
Oh,
altar girl in my church.
okay.
I was confirmed into the faith at 8 years old, and I was the only female altar girl at 8 years old at my church, because I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but if someone tells me that's not things that girls usually do, I say, "Hold my beer. I'll be right back after I'm done doing it. Fight me."
Well, then
So
good. I get to ask this question. I'm keeping you longer than I anticipated, but we have what we call momentum in
mhm.
broadcasting, and I just enjoy. You and I could probably chat all day. Do you look back at the shit you used to believe, and the further you get away from it, it becomes more ridiculous, like exponentially, day by day, and you think, how in the world did I ever hold that belief? Do you have that feeling? And is there a specific belief or three that fits that category?
You're gonna get such different answers from both Paul and myself.
I want them. I'll start with Paul. Come on. You're freshly, relatively out of the faith. Do you look back more and more and go, what the fuck?
Well, obviously, the ones that are most actively embarrassing for me are the science related beliefs that I held. So, for example, that humans and dinosaurs were definitely around at the same time, and the ark and the flood definitely happened, and the Earth is 6,000 years old. Like those are the ones that are a little more actively embarrassing, right? And I've definitely looked back and ashamed about that. A lot of the other things, I think we kind of opened this with, we talked a little bit about how, yeah, I would make this sacrifice now. The more I think about, atonement and sin, and this the whole human endeavor of selling us that we're sinful, which is a weird concept that we're somehow harming a god that can't be harmed, and that demands retribution. Like that all the more I think about those nuances, those are the ones that I'm now kind of like, man, this just doesn't add up. And yeah, but the praise songs were kind of glossing over all of this stuff. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think the more we delve into those details,
Now, you know the one that gets me, and I'm shocked I didn't pick it up. What I think you brought up the commandment, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God." And I thought, how can you command someone to love someone else, right? I mean, you realize that you love someone, but how does compulsory love even work? And it never even occurred to me, oh, I should go love God.
Hmm.
But love doesn't work that way. I'll let you jump in, Shannon. Beliefs.
Beliefs that I had prior, I had a very different experience than Paul because I was never in like a fundamentalist type faith. I was an Anglican. So what I'm the most embarrassed about is the fact that I didn't hold my faith to scrutiny at all. So I realized that I was holding embarrassing positions after I like started to try to become more faithful. Like, so a bad thing happened to me and I turned to religion, because that, as you do, right? As you're told, you're supposed to. That's what you're supposed to do when you need help, is you're supposed to turn to God. So I turned to my Bible and I started actually reading it for the first time. And that's when all the questions started coming up. Like when I got to Jephthah and I was like, oh, okay, so God loves human sacrifice because that guy just killed his own daughter. So like God, that's a human sacrifice, right? So why, that's not good. And then I got to Numbers and I was like, oh shit, God causes abortions. If you suspect your wife maybe cheated on you, you can just, God will just take the baby right out of her. So how am I holding this position on abortion? I realized that I wasn't scrutinizing anything. What I'm the most embarrassed of is that I just allowed a faith to be placed in my head without question and believed leadership instead of formulating my own opinions. And I will never do that again. And I'm raising a child who will never do that. I'm raising a child who will formulate his own opinions, who I'm teaching him how to think, not what to think. And I live a massive portion of my life being taught what to think and just accepting that without even realizing that I was, until I actively attempted to hold it to scrutiny and see how it compared to the reality around me. So what I'm the most embarrassed about isn't a specific belief, it's how I lived my life. That's what I'm the most embarrassed about. That mind frame that I was in, that mindset where I just allowed someone external to me to tell me, because I believed that they had authority, what I should believe.